for us to do today in the shop. Doesn't use a lot of tools, uses some basic materials, and it's fun to do. This would be a great project to do with a son or a daughter. It takes an afternoon, and it's pretty fun. Let's go.
Today we'll be using a 1x4x6 red oak board, some basic hardware that I picked up, and some golf tees that I had in my golf bag. Now here I'm using my miter saw to cut our pieces to length. We'll need 2 pieces at 12 inches and 2 pieces at 15 inches. Now here's a tip if you don't have a miter saw available to you. If you buy your material at your local home and garden center, they usually have a handsaw and a miter box set up in the trim department. Just cut your pieces before you leave the store. When you get home, they're ready to go. Now as I'm making my last cut, you'll notice that we have 1 piece left over. This is extra in case we make a mistake, but hopefully we won't need it. Now using my ruler, I've established the center point of our board, which in our case should be 6 inches. Following that, I'm making marks on either side of the center point at 1.5 inch increments. This will be the spacing for our pegs later on. Now I'm using a square and the marks we made earlier at the top of the board as a guide, and I'm creating center points for us to use to drill our holes later. It's not necessary to use a square. You could use a ruler just as well. Here I'm just using some double stick tape to join our 2 boards together. Since we only marked the first board, by joining them together when we drill our holes, they'll be exactly the same, mirror images of each other. Also, when using double stick tape, make sure that you apply a great deal of pressure. We don't want them coming apart. Now here I'm just using a piece of oak to give me the desired curve that I'm looking for on the piece. You can use anything at your disposal to make your curve. Here I'm just using a roll of tape to give me the proper radius for our side pieces. Real high tech. Okay, at this point it's sanding, and more sanding to refine the curves, but it'll be worth it in the end. Here I'm using my drill press to drill the holes through the 2 pieces. You can use a regular cordless drill and a drill bit to accomplish the same thing. Now here I'm drilling some pilot holes while our 2 sides are still together. These will be for assembly later, and it's easier to drill 4 holes than it is to drill 8. Now prior to drilling, I use one of my short pieces to trace the outline onto my side piece so I would know where to drill my holes. You'll see I'm using a backer board underneath our piece as I drill. This is to keep the back from blowing out as the drill bit comes through. Now just grab a putty knife or something of that nature and pop your 2 boards apart. Now it's time to lay out for our chains. I started by measuring 2.5 inches down from the top, then another 1.5 inches down from that. That'll be the position of our second chain, and then finally 3 more inches, which will be the position for our third chain. Now using our previous marks, I'm measuring in 3/4 of an inch on each of the side pieces. This will give us the final position for our chains. Now using a 1/16 inch bit, I'm drilling small starter holes for our little eyelet screws. Doesn't take much. You only need to go about 1/8 of an inch deep, just enough to give it a head start in this oak. Now, as this is the last step, now's a good time to take all of your pieces and finish sand them to 220 grit. Now here, I'm using several light coats of a dye to try to achieve the final color. I'm sneaking up on it one coat at a time.
Well, good morning. I stayed late last night and applied the finish to our piece. It turned out fairly well. I'm happy with it. Just some dye, alcohol, and shellac is the finish. Pretty simple, dries pretty fast. So now it's time to add the hardware to it. Let's get started. All right, now we take our pieces of chain that we've made with our barrel swivels and our little eye hooks on the ends. Now remember our little eyelet holes that we drilled earlier? This is where they really come in handy. Now when you're first putting these in, just get them started, both of them, which sometimes can be a little tough. And then once you have them both started, then you can start tightening up your bolts until you get the desired tension that you want. That's starting to look pretty nice. I'm going to take my little pliers here because this oak is tough. Just be careful that you don't over tighten these up because this chain is fragile. It has a little bit of a twist to it, but with the barrel swivels, now it's loose again. So just keep tightening your eyelet screws up till you get them where you want them. I think that's it. Now I'll just repeat for the other two. And we're almost done. Alright, now it should be looking something like this. Now remember those golf tees in the beginning? I actually painted them with antique brass paint. And this is a handy tip if you didn't know. Just using cardboard, poke something through like this, and it makes it very easy to paint. But it also serves another purpose. As I set the depth on them, so if you can see this in the camera, to leave this part bare for when we glue them in later. Let's stick them in and see how they look. finished depth on these is going to be set at 1.5 inches. One trying to get away. I think it's going to look good. Let's glue them up. Well, there's our finished piece. I think it turned out nice. As you can see, my wife's already got some of her jewelry located on there, trying to sort out where things are going to go. But it makes a nice little display case as well. One other thing it also does is it makes it easy for her to see exactly what she's got. She can pick stuff out like that without having to dig through her jewelry box, find mates, things of that nature. They're all right there together. Very inexpensive project, and it was really fun to build. It was really fun to figure out how to build it. That was the thing. She gave me the task of, this is what I want, and this is my solution. I'd love to hear from the rest of you guys out there if you've ever built a project like this. But until next time, thanks for watching.